We're here at the Mastermind meeting in Laguna with, I'm Leslie Smith. We've got a group of people in from San Diego and Los Angeles sitting here with me. And we're gonna make today's meeting really will be about your questions and what you're dealing with or your aspirations are for your real estate goals. And we'll talk about what strategies and philosophies I've embraced and learned from my mentor over a 15-year investing career, where I've gotten a lot of input, and he's just a master teacher, Marty Stone, who's been my mentor. So he's been very helpful. So I'd like to start by having everybody speak about what their aspirations are, and their name and why they're here, what they'd like to get out of the meeting. So why don't we start with Kevin Walsh, who's our IT guy, who's helped out and been part of all the meetings and really amazing. I'm really thankful. So.
Sure, and I'm gonna turn the camera.
There you go. There you go. That's Kevin.
So I've not bought any property yet, and plan to shortly after I get married. Getting married in just 30 days, and so there's a lot going on now to be searching for real estate. But shortly after, gonna totally be on it. Yeah, as Leslie explains, I definitely want to have not just career, but also the investment part, and especially because I'm so attracted to riskier paths of career. I want to work in startups and, maybe even create my own businesses and things. And so I want to have the foundation of real estate and also stocks. And so initially I want to be looking for ideally like a quadruplex, so that I can get rental income. And yeah, I'm open to a lot of ways that a good investment can show up though.
Good. Okay, so that's Kevin Walsh. Now let's go on to who's next? Brad Brown is going to share with us what his plan is.
Hi, I'm Brad Brown, and the reason why I came is because I'm always interested in real estate, but I happen to own two pieces of property. I'm 100% in, the meaning that they're both paid for, so I have no mortgage on either property, and I'm thinking that maybe I shouldn't be so completely invested in those properties and use that money that I've got in it for potentially more income stream.
Yes.
So that's why I'm here.
Great. Good.
Okay, you don't all have to go over there. I'll come to you.
Okay, so here's Lynn. Go ahead. There you go.
I'm Lynn, and a similar situation to what Brad just described. I'm too invested in a way in one property, and I want to diversify and use the bank's money down the line as I do that. Look at commercial apartment complexes and also flipping homes and remodeling them. So very interested. Here with Leslie to say, and honored to be here. Thank you.
Good. Fabulous. All right, Pilar.
Hi, I am Pilar. I am from Mexico City. I am an attorney. I just got a property here in San Diego a year ago, and I want to do finance. And my intentions is commercial property. And Leslie has been extraordinarily useful to teach me that the way my parents taught me is not the right way.
That is so true. New ideas, new foundations for investing differently than our parents did. So, all right.
Hi, I'm Angela Travers, and a number of years ago, I was building my real estate portfolio, and I had a number of single-family homes in the San Diego area that I owned and managed myself, and I kind of was my own handyman too. So I kind of did it all. I divested a couple of years ago, and now I just have one property in Hawaii that I still manage long distance-wise. Anyway, right now, my investment really is, I do hard money lending at present, and I don't know that I'm ready to get back into actually owning property. The hard money lending is working for me right now, but I'm so excited to be here. So thank you, Leslie.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm hoping I can put the board here if I need to, Kevin, and it wouldn't block the second shot. Would that be true?
It'll be in a shot, but
We'll block it?
yeah, and we can also tweak it.
Okay, good. Okay, so interesting. I heard a couple times people wanting to utilize their equity in their existing building more. And one of the things that I would say is like, you don't just manage a property. You manage the property, you manage yourself, which is so important. That's the half of the deal, is when the market goes down, whether you're gonna keep the building or sell it, and you manage the equity. So a lot of the conversation that I heard today and a lot of what people are aspiring to do is manage that equity to utilize it and get more out of it. So Brad, let's talk a little bit about what you have going on. I mean, Brad has an interesting situation. The whole, tell him what happened with your building, with the rents. He had rents on his building that were going along as expected. Their comps with the neighborhood. And then he had someone knock on his door and say, I've got another use for your building and I'll pay you a lot more. And he was very fortunate that he bought a building that has this new use.
Yeah, right. So that was just happened to be a commercial building, and I was running my business and I shrunk down my business, so I didn't really need to use that building anymore. So I was approached by a couple of guys who wanted to use it for a marijuana dispensary about 3 years ago, and they offered to pay me $3,000. They offered to pay me going market rent until they got the conditional use permit from the city of San Diego, and at which time, once I got that conditional use permit, the rent would double, so I'd get twice the market value. So I've been waiting now. Of course, it's taking a long time. We're about 60, 90 days away from getting the conditional use permit.
And 2 or 3 years in the waiting process?
Well, my building's been sitting empty for 3 years and never paying rent on it, which is amazing.
Right. So what happens are these buildings, so Brad is a really good illustration of a building is a small business and it's valued on how much cash flow it creates. So if you buy a building that's a wreck and you redo it, it's worth more, right? Because potentially it's making, not just because it's worth more like a house would be worth more, but as a small business, it's making more income. So now his building is making double the income. It would be on the table, what's that building worth? You know, a bank might say, well, only one tenant is going to pay that much. But somebody else may say, you have a 10-year lease or whatever his lease is with this fantastic tenant. I'm going to go with that, and the building's worth 50% more. It'd be hard to say. He's so unique in what he's got.
It is unique. The
Yeah.
other thing too is the conditional use permit doesn't stay with the business owner; it stays with the building.
Right. So you're
potentially
really set.
long time.
Yeah. Yes. So I think Brad's question is to check with you is that he's got all this equity in his building and he's wondering how he can do more with it. So, I mean, the base of it is the way that real estate works so much better than so many other investments is leverage, which means that you're using the bank's money. And banks are really more eager to get back into the market than they have been. In the past, like 5 years, they've been backed off a little bit, and now it's definitely gotten better. They're more available. They have different loan programs. I bought this house in December of this year, and even now, already in April, there are different loan programs coming out. So the lending market is really changing. So if somebody thought they couldn't get a loan on their building, oh, I don't make enough money, or I'm self-employed, check back in 5-6 months. It really does change, and I really encourage people to have a loan broker who really can look at what their program is. And that would probably be Brad's first step, would be to talk to a loan broker. 5 years, great, if I did refinance it, I took some of this cash, what could I qualify to buy? And then he'd look at payments and he would start to say how much of his payment is covered by that extra rent at his building, or just by the rent. Even if the rent hadn't doubled, he could likely have taken some of that cash out before and covered it by buying another building, right? So he'd be upping his mortgage and changing and buying another building. I'm just right now in the middle of refinancing, and all of my rates are coming down. So I'm really taking money out of buildings, but my payment is not going up because my rate's coming down. Many people, though, have some starter rates or something that's at 2-point-something%, and those rates may go up, and you'd have to look at it in an Excel spreadsheet, have your mortgage lender work with you, or yourself, or an accountant, and really lay out, all right, if I take this out, that'll leave me this much money to buy another house, or to buy a property, or buy 2 properties, and what am I expecting? You know, really lay out what the income's going to be. But generally, you can take money out of a building and buy another building, and look at it carefully, and have 2 assets versus 1. Or in Brad's case, maybe even 3 or 4 assets. And I'm not suggesting that's in his comfort zone to go from maybe even one building to 3 or 4 buildings, but he likely could do that if he cared to and had a great team behind him to move in, because that's a big amount to take on your plate, to go from like 1 to 4. And I did have a friend, she sold her building, gorgeous building in Venice. They'd had her husband's building, had built his business in that building in Venice, and made, I would gather to say, millions from the building and probably not that much on the business. So the real estate totally slammed dunked the business, and they sold that, and they went from selling the business building into like 6 apartment buildings, and it was a tough transition because it was just a lot all at once, a lot of time outlay, and so that sometimes is a consideration. But they had to 1031 exchange their profits, so that was something that needed to happen. So you would have to consider, and it would have to be up to you or each person individually, what it would take for you to buy something and what your comfort zone would be. And I say that you just get into action and start looking, talking to loan brokers, and see what feels good. When I first went to look at my first building, it was 8 units, and my real estate agent said, I usually don't start someone on 8 units, it's kind of too big, but your parents were in real estate and you've redone a couple buildings, so let's see how that works. And I remember driving out to the building and being like, well, I think I'll know when I'm there. And I walked through this building, it was a little courtyard apartment building, and I just said, not even a care in the world, no problem. I can buy this, feels good. But I have walked up to some buildings and thought, that feels like that's kind of too big of a building, or it didn't click with me. So I think you would intuitively know, or you have a good team and you really trust and all the numbers are out and you would know what you could go into. And nothing says that you have to do everything at once either. But the fact is, and what my mentor always says, it is also more safe to have money out of your building than in the building, which means in the bank's pocket, which is really interesting. I had thought recently that when you get to a point, you can kind of cruise. Like, I'm not building my real estate anymore, and that at this point I would just hold and not refinance and take cash out, and the buildings would get fat. And we call that fat because they're financially fat. They have a lot of cash in them. And my feeling, and many people, my dad's was, let the building get so fat that it's all paid off. And that's what Brad did. But my mentor, again, in this new round for me, just this last week, I had a long conversation with him. He said, you get that money out of the buildings. It's much safer in your hands. Something comes up, earthquake, landslide, total change in your health plans. You have the cash in your account and not in the bank's account. And you're much more agile. Opportunity happens. You're just much more able to do something. And that you can't always get money out of the bank. Right now you can refinance, but 5-6 years ago things were extremely tight. They were giving 50% of the loan to value. Now they're maybe giving 60 to 70, not that you definitely want to go that high, but that the loan to values are a lot higher. So the point is, and again, it's your comfort zone. If you can't go to sleep at night because you're getting this big loan that doesn't feel right, you have to look at your own scenario and look at it. But I've just implemented what my mentor said, again, and refinanced my buildings and pulled the cash out, so I'm holding it. I'm investing it. I have it in stocks. I'm using it for the remodel here, and they're not holding it. So the question to you would be, what would you be comfortable with, and what do you want to build, really? And do you want to dip? I know you have a condo as well. You said 2 buildings. I believe that's a condo. Is if you would want to pull that. But the interesting thing is, too, my real estate agent that I work with could probably look at your condo and see what the actual return is, how much the rent is that you're getting, and your expenses and your insurance and all, and see what your return on your equity is. And look at that number, which the return on the equity is, of course, the percentage return that you get on the money you have invested in the building. And actually, it's not invested. ROI is the money that's invested. Return on investment. That's when you first buy a building, you look at those numbers of return on investment. Whereas when you have a building for a long time, like Brad does, he has a lot more cash in the building, it'd be return on your equity. So if he was to look at the return on the equity, when he bought, let's say, the condo for $215,000. So, okay, when he bought the condo for $215,000, he was getting this much rent. So now he has everything paid off. The $215,000 condo is worth approximately what now? About $550,000. So that condo is making a certain amount of rent. That rent hasn't changed substantially, but the value of the building has changed substantially. So his return is actually really low because he has we'll just round it off to $500,000. producing one condo's rent, and before he had the down payment, which was maybe 80,000 or 50,000 or 25,000, and it was producing the condo's rent. So you can see where that 500,000 is not producing much more. I would call it an asset that relies on appreciation. So that's how that's really going to make money, is through appreciation. And appreciation is all over the place. As we know, we just went through a large cycle where things went down. You can't always count on appreciation. So that's where I personally like apartment buildings or retail or industrial or something like that, where you have a cross section, different people giving you money. The rents can go up, and so it's your value of your building can go up based on what it's producing, and it also goes up with the appreciation as well. And if the appreciation goes down and your building's worth less, you're not so worried that you're down $200,000 because it's producing really strong rent anyway. It's stronger than your payment, of course. You get paid to own the building. So it would be a question to you, what's your comfort zone? And would you be willing to sell one, or would you want to refinance? Sometimes it's really a slam dunk. You say, the condo area's gone up, it's on fire, it's fabulous, of course I'm keeping it. Or you may say that area's kind of underperformed, or I used to live in that condo, it's not in an area I like. Or you go with what you would like to do and get a professional's advice so you have the numbers to look at and what you would like to do, and you decide. So any ideas what you're more comfortable pulling cash out of?
Well, this time I'd say it's just a condo,
Mm-hmm.
the one that I pull out of the building until the CUP comes in. That's like to me, that seems like it's a golden goose, a golden cash cow.
Totally.
Yeah,
Right.
because I'm getting twice the amount of rent.
Right.
For what will be a very long period of time.
Right. So now it would be interesting. I'll be so interested to hear what banks say and what an appraiser would say, because right now a lot of us, myself included, we've taken houses or condos and put them into vacation rental, and so we're getting a lot more income. But appraisers won't recognize the vacation rental income because it's not standardized. So we can't really get the amount of equity out of our buildings because it's based on the old-fashioned way. So it'd be interesting if they'll take into account what you have and how long your lease is. That's probably part of the equation that they'll look at. And I'm not an appraiser, so I wouldn't know.
Right.
Right. So if your building is worth, what do you think your building's worth?
Well, the building is worth probably about 550,000 right now as it sits. But when it gets to the CUP, from an investment standpoint, it could be worth about 850 to 900,000,
Right.
around that range.
Right. So he has, let's say, if you were to do a 50% loan and be very conservative, then maybe he'd have 400,000 that he could take out of his building. Maybe if it was only valued at 600,000, he could take 400,000 out and leave 200 equity in the building. So what the question would be, what can Brad buy with 400,000? Well, I can tell you in Long Beach, you could buy $1.2 million, be very safe and buy $1.2 million building and have 8 units and be getting income on 8 units, and now he'll get appreciation. This is the other thing about taking your equity out. Now he doesn't just have one building getting appreciation, he has 2. So when the California market is going up, he's getting the appreciation on both buildings. And so he'd have $1 million, maybe potentially, just scenario I'm looking at, $1.2 million building where the appreciation's going up or down. But if you have multiple units and a couple of income streams coming from a building, if the equity goes down, if the appreciation, the building's worth goes down, you feel more safe because you've got a really good amount of money coming in. So he's basically sitting on a whole nother building there, a pretty nice sized building, about $1.2 million, for when he's ready and when he wants to look at the numbers and decide whether that works or how far he wants to go. The bank will also be partnering with him, so they're going to help decide how much they're going to let him do, depending on his taxes and obligations and debt and all, and FICO score, and many things. Yeah. So it's just what an opportunity. You're in such a great place to be there. I really think it's great. And I would encourage you too to have a real estate broker look at the condo as well and show you what the potential is on that, like the cash that you have in and the return that you're getting and using it, if you're open to it, just so you can be aware.
Right now the market condos has been better recently, in particular, because a lot of people are in our generation are retiring, so they're looking for something. And so the condo is probably appreciated quite a bit. How much more can go? Who knows?
Right, but it's a matter of if being in that condo and having the income coming in, or being in another asset that's larger too, utilizing leverage. You could be in another. I mean, if you really sold the condo outright and took the 500,000, you'd have realtor fees, let's say 450 or something. You would have again another $1.2 million building. So you'd be getting appreciation on a $1.2 million building versus a $500,000 building. So again, that's just huge, and depreciation, which is amazing. I mean, my tax bill is like, I think it was $2,500 last year. So the depreciation on buildings is huge for wiping out your income. And it's the wealthy getting wealthier where that's in place and really is amazing to utilize, but nobody talks about it. It's the unglamorous side of investing is your depreciation. Nobody's saying, hey, how's your depreciation? Yeah. So,
Sounds like depression.
yeah, exactly, right. So that'll be interesting for you. Any other questions or anything else you want to look at?
Well, the numbers would be what I would want to look at, because that's the
Yeah.
confusing part to me, is property taxes.
Yeah.
And then you've got ongoing repair costs.
So those are all very easy numbers that somebody pulls up on buildings. If you decide, I'm a big fan, as everybody knows, I own apartments because as my mentor says, somebody always needs a place to rent. And if you have a retail building or commercial building, sometimes if a lease can come due and you have other people that are coming to look at your building and they're looking at the building, but they can't get out of their lease for 3 or 4 months, then when they want to move in, they have to take 3 or 4 months to get the building into the situation that they want it. They need to rehab it. So you may not have rent for 2, 4, or 5 months and you're carrying a payment, and maybe if it's a single tenant facility, then you don't even have any income. So those are a little, in my term, riskier than having an apartment building that I can fill a unit in 2 weeks if I need to. I just lower the rent $50, I can get somebody in there. So I never have prolonged vacancy. So you'll have to look at what you would want to buy, and whatever real estate agent in that avenue could tell you what buildings are going for and what you could get, and you can look in a couple areas. You can look, if that's what you know is the commercial area in San Diego, you would want to look in that again. It'd be up to you to shop around or talk to a guy doing apartments, see what the returns are on that as well, so you can decide what works for you. But to me, one of the biggest things in going into anything, not so much on a single tenant like Brad owns, is that you need to have a great team. Like my managers, I've been through a lot of managers. It's kind of the running joke with my friends that you fired another manager. Like, it's been a rough one. But having a team of accountant, real estate agent, manager is huge. My real estate agent, it is not about buying a building and saying thank you and they send you flowers when you close the deal. It's not like a normal real estate agent. It's like a stockbroker, constantly checking back. I'm calling saying, wow, I just got this rent. What are you getting in that area? There's a lot of exchange and ongoing portfolio management. So I really think a real estate agent is part of the team, not just transactional, much, much beyond that. So anything else about that?
No, I'm just kind of numbers guy. I like to see the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a gal up in Los Angeles, and possibly somebody else, I'm talking to Carol about possibly doing this, that sits down with people and says, all right, let's do a spreadsheet. If you sold this and you're going to get a payment for that, and your loan broker said this, then you could have that, and you'll have this left over, and you'll have this much padding. So you really lay it out before you go in so that you're really comfortable. And you can shift the numbers to what works for you so that you're not at all wondering or surprised. That's the thing. We don't want to really be surprised. We're planning these out. These are big investments. They should have a lot of expertise behind making a decision. So, okay, who else wants to talk? Yes, Lynn.
Based on some things you said, is part of the reason why you like apartment complexes because of the 1031 exchange versus home?
Right. Okay. So what Lynn is asking about is 1031 exchange, which is a huge asset for anybody invested in real estate. And her question was, how does it compare, or can you do it on residential? How does it fall in with residential? And the fact is, if something's rented, you can do a 1031 out of it. So if you have a house and it's rented, you can 1031 into something else. And Lynn and I spoke a little earlier. She was talking about her house, which this is an interesting conversation to bring up in relation to you. Do you want to explain a little bit where you are with your house, and so because I'll bring you into the loop and we'll discuss your specific situation.
Right. actual numbers.
Yeah, exactly, sure.
But anyway, so, but I do want to come back to the 3 questions before I forget them. At some point, I want to find out if there's a choice with buying commercial shopping centers, apartment complex, homes that you might refurbish or hold on to just
Yes.
to get that passive income. So that's like one generic question about which way to go.
Okay,
And
then the 1031 question.
1031, and then also, do you always have to refurbish an apartment complex? Because that seems like such a daunting task. I get it, doing a house, but a whole apartment complex, that. And then also, where should you choose a real estate agent that's nearby, and should you also choose real estate that's nearby? So the realtor knows the area, and you can go to the area and check on it. A lot of questions.
Yes, okay, so that's 4, and so we'll try and remember those and come back to those. Okay, so just,
My situation.
yes, so your situation, she's got,
So I wanted to be Newport Coast. I got in, kind of on the bottom, but I was fortunate enough that 2 years ago when it happened, the market was at its lowest point.
yeah,
Got a great rate, 2.5% for 7 years. I have 4.5 years left in that, and the other half of the house is also financed. And good rates. The second one is more floating, but it's low.
right,
And so, yeah, a lot of my investment is now because real estate grows, it
Yes.
can dwarf some of your other investments.
Exactly.
Sometimes. So
right.
that's a good thing. So,
It's a great thing.
and now I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not making any passive income. I'm like this house is like an albatross in a way because I could be living, in a smaller home and make my money work for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So Lynn's question is a lot like Brad's in that she's got a lot of equity. Hers happens to be in her primary residence. And her question is, how can she get some passive income and utilize the equity that she's built up and take that and parlay it into a larger portfolio in some direction? Might it be retail or apartments or buying houses, flipping and holding them? So that was the question that I got from her. So one thing that you can do in a house, which is an interesting thing if it's a single family residence. Again, my mentor brought this up when I had a lot of equity in my house in Venice. I'd lived there for 8 years and the house had doubled. So if I'd sold it, I would have paid taxes on all of it. So his recommendation was, is there any way you can move and rent it or refinance it, pull cash out as your primary residence, so you're going to get the best rate as your primary residence, or stay with what you have and somehow you get cash out through your equity lines.
I don't have equity in the house.
You don't have equity in the house. So if you sell it, but if you sell it, don't you have equity to go buy something else?
If I sell it, I won't have those loans and I will have cash.
Right. So that is equity. The cash that you would have is equity. So the question would be, if she took her house, I don't know how many gains that you would have. Do you have a lot of gains in it? Would you pay a lot of taxes on your gains?
Yes.
So this is an option for her. This is a great problem to have. I mean, look at this. She's got a lot of gains and equity to go buy something else, and she's ready to redistribute. I call it move her checkers. She wants to move her checkers around and change things up to have more assets to produce more income. So my feeling would be, and one of the things that Marty had said to me is, if you took your house and you could rent it, then it becomes a rental property. And so she would take her and I'm not suggesting she does this, but this is an option. Again, it's her comfort zone of what she wants to do. That she would take her house and she would rent it as a rental, and she would move out, and she'd get at least 2 years tax returns with it as a rental. And then when she goes to sell it, she can 1031 exchange into something else that's of a commercial building. So she could take income producing, at that point it would be income producing property, and she could go into an apartment or retail or anything else that was going to produce income. She couldn't go buy land because that's not income producing, but anything else she could go into. So that would be a strategy, longer term strategy of setting it up to avoid, who knows, sometimes people have hundreds of thousands in taxes that they can avoid by doing that. And it just depends again on your finances and how you want to set things up and move around and work with your accountant, and if you want to leave and where you would go to rent that out.
Does it have to be a like kind of property?
Just income property.
It could be commercial or
Yeah,
residential.
exactly,
Okay,
income
awesome.
property, right. So if you rented it, the other thing would be to not rent it and to sell it possibly and move somewhere else. And she's, in an earlier conversation with her, she had talked about being interested in divesting of that house because it was too big now. So she would possibly go into a different house and then also take some of that cash and buy something, right? So again, move her checkers around and get that cash going in something for income.
Which one do you like better?
It depends on what your gains are. And then sometimes you go, okay, I'm jumping through hoops, or I'm going to go rent here. So do I want to do that to save $100,000 on taxes? Or if it's $50,000, but if it's $400,000, you'd have to look at that number with because I think starting out with her accountant and a loan broker to see what she could go buy and would qualify for depends on her job, her FICO score, a lot of numbers, her debt, her reserves, what your reserves will have, and removing things with, again, a team of people giving you advice on what would work. And ultimately, passing the pillow test that you go to sleep at night and you don't go, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid, I'm signing this big loan. And yeah.
Really like that term. So
Yeah.
what about choosing an agent and a property that's within, let's say, 20 minutes or something?
Right. So her question is about choosing property that's in kind of your backyard or someplace around where you live. I don't necessarily agree with that. I have buildings in Long Beach. I'm down there maybe twice a year. That's it. So I drive by and go there. I have another friend who lives in Wisconsin. He has probably 200 units in Long Beach, and he flies in once a year and looks at his buildings. He actually buys buildings. This is really interesting. He'll buy a building through the agent who will send him all the numbers, all the pictures. He says it's great, and the agent just buys it. He never goes to his new building. He just bought it based on paper, and may get out for his one trip a year and then take a look at the building. So can you imagine that?
Well, if you're remodeling an apartment building, it would be different. It
No.
doesn't sound like you're doing it.
Well, we are, but we're basically the managers going in the remodel is, I might go and pick paint colors and do landscaping because I do landscaping and I do design. But the interiors are done, and I may choose things for the management company and say, when you're redoing this, I want to do this brown granite, and I want to do this flooring, and I definitely want an arched faucet, and let's do, I don't know, I want mini blinds versus verticals or something. And so you work it out with your manager, but then they take care of it. You don't have to do it. This is the nice part. So it's like, it's running a small business, but you don't have any employees, and usually you don't. If you have a building 16 units and above, you have to have a manager that's on site. But a lot of times that's also worked through your management company, so you're not, having an employee and having to do all that paperwork. So
does the 16 rule apply?
It's, I believe it's through, I'm not sure. Good question. Kevin's question was 16 units and above needing a manager on site. Is that local or whatever? I believe it's California at least, if not the whole country. I'm not sure. So all my buildings are like 12 and less. So I don't have any of that. And I don't like the bigger buildings. I don't like the 12 unit. Always has a vacancy, always has something wrong. So I kind of associate that building as having a lot wrong. But it's not, because it just has a lot of units.
So under 12 or under 10?
I have like 8, I like 7 and 8 units. I have a couple of triplexes. So, and my other friend has 40 unit buildings. That's what he likes. So it's all what you want. I have a friend who bought a building, well, she bought a couple buildings, and she just says, I want the building with the jacuzzis and the underground parking, and everybody has dishwashers. And I look at that kind of building, I go, that's the worst, that's my nightmare. It's like that big of a 200 unit building. So everybody, buddies up to something. And as far as the question about do you buy houses or do you buy commercial or do you buy apartments, I looked at commercial because I thought I'm kind of tired of all this turnover and I've had all this problem with managers. So I looked at commercial, but I started getting listings, and it was really evident to me very quickly, I don't get it. Like this building looks tired, but I don't know what to do with the awnings, and the pillars are out of date. I don't know how to redo a commercial building's pillars, or I didn't know anything of what to do. So for me, that was too foreign, and so I looked, and then I retracted and went back to apartments. And luckily, I found a great manager now, and I'm really excited about that. So.
And do you believe in choosing agents, real estate agents that are right in that area, or does it not matter?
I think they need to be in the area for sure. I definitely think an agent. I have an agent in Long Beach that does, well, a very broad version or area beyond that, Downey and Hawthorne and that whole South Bay area. which I think all of it is not rent controlled. So I like that. I also like that Long Beach area because there's so much oil, all the ports, lots of money coming in, tax money, tons of tax money coming into Long Beach. And a lot of it goes back into programs. I got my building painted for free. They'll come in and do windows, replace all the windows on old things, lead abatement programs. So it has a lot of money that comes back into the thing. New street trees, lots of things. So I like Long Beach, but there are other places that people buy too. You know.
Any places locally in Otis or?
I don't know the Orange County area. I do know that the guy that I work with is with Marcus and Millishap, and it's the largest real estate brokerage in the country. So they have people all over. So when I was looking in Arizona, he referred me to an agent in Arizona. So that I liked it too because that agent had a little bit of accountability within the company to someone that had referred them, rather than walking in. And I've seen people go with an agent that is more transactional and happy to sell you something. A lot of people went to the Midwest when all the prices were really high and everybody thought we're in a bubble. Well, we knew we were in a bubble, and the period of an upswing had extended beyond the usual, like 7 years. So everybody was wary this is going to break at some point. So a lot of people went to the Midwest and bought a house or 8 units or 10 units or to Texas. And I saw a lot of situations happen where the agent really wasn't tied to them. They were somebody from California that came in, and they didn't end up with a good building. So we have some other people that have just come to join us. They drove down from Los Angeles. Come on and have a seat. Nicole and her brother, I think. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, everybody.
He's an expert.
Nice to see you. Yeah. Good. So have a seat over here. Good deal. We're just in the middle of discussing what everybody's plans are, what their dreams are, aspirations, and we were talking with Lynn about her house and refinancing and what she's going to do. So I'm going to continue on with maybe Angela or Pilar or whoever wants to speak. Have I answered your question?
Yes.
Yes. And so the 1031.
Don't go out of state with Austin and all these other areas. A lot of people are telling about other areas like Portland and Austin.
Yeah, I would say you can go to another state if you're really hooked up with somebody you know or a group and you really know them and have people they're accountable to. I think going in and finding an agent in some community that you don't really know is a little dicey. And I say that just out of experience. Seeing people go and buy things in, honestly, Texas a lot, Ohio, Florida, a lot of purchases in Florida that were not so hot, Albuquerque, and them being disappointed with it. So have some accountability in there or referrals. Yeah.
How do you feel about hard money lending versus?
Hard money lending she's talking about, which is money that's easier to get, but it's very expensive. I think if you need to go get hard money lending in a situation that's short term, to give it, it's a great way. You could take that asset. Hard money lending is where you become the bank. Like $500,000, I say, okay, Lynn wants to redo a building. I'm going to take the second deed on this building. I'm going to take a position, and I'm going to lend her money. But the fact is, a lot of times people did have things fall through, and people took back the buildings. So you can end up with a building which sounds good. If I gave Lynn $100,000 and it was a $200,000 building, that's not so bad for me to take it back. But I've taken back land in the middle of Arizona. People took back apartment buildings that the owner put all his friends and family in that were rent controlled. Years of lawsuits, so you never know. It's not always rosy. But again, you have to do your research. And I just put a post on my website about this, trying to look at different avenues to invest, and you should read the post. It was kind of aimed towards Kevin, who's going to a lot of classes, pulling in lots of information, lots of groups, clubs, and looking at first trust deeds and buying tax liens and all kinds of different things. And so it was about looking at different possibilities. So.
Thank you so much.
So you have acted as the bank, the lender, and you've had the second on property before you've done that?
Actually, I've done first trust deeds, where I've gone in, say somebody bought land, and this was a thing in Arizona. A bunch of us had done it for like 15 years, and it really went well until it didn't. So it was really great until it wasn't. And so I ended up with lots, like 6 different lots scattered across Arizona. We gave money to the owner of the lots, the developer, and we had a percentage on that lot, but everything tanked, and we ended up with a lot that's gone from like $30,000 lots to $6,000 lots. or 60,000 to 30,000. So it's been a lesson in that. But I do think they can work out well. And if you know the asset and you look at the asset and see it, a lot of us too, or somebody in the real estate club that used to go in the early 2000s had somebody that came and spoke at our group, and they did first trust deeds, and a bunch of people invested, but we didn't see the properties. So we ended up with taking back a property in Hemet and just all kinds of things that were really, it was not fortunate. But at that point, everybody was winning, everybody was making money, so we were getting a little loose on doing our homework. So definitely do your due diligence and look at everything you put your name on, for sure. Because we didn't, at some point, we started trusting and we got burned. So luckily it was for a smaller amount than, but I've never been, everything with my apartments, never had a bad experience, never had any mess. And we've been through a big down cycle, and I bought my buildings 3, 4, 5. I bought one building right in the middle of the down cycle, so I paid at the top of the market, then everything went down. And they were all fine, because the income was happening, and I'd say, okay, the building now is worth $200,000 less, or $300,000 less, but the fact is, the income's totally coming in, so I'm making $2,500 a month. The building went from $1.2 million to $900,000, but who would sell it? It's performing. It's in a great area. I'm going to hold it. And so now they're all back up and they're all fine. So when people say, is it the time to buy or it's too high, if it's an asset that really is producing good income and you buy it and hold it, I think you can get in. I mean, you don't want to buy ridiculously high, and you want to make sure it's cash flowing when you buy it. We have a loan that's longer than 6 months. You want a long 5-7 year loan. Try and get in as long as you can, where you can cash flow, and then I think you've got some good insulation. Yeah. Okay, Pilar. Or Angela. No, Angela's not. Okay. Or you want to speak, or I can ask maybe Nicole or. All right. So we have. Why don't you? We have 2 newcomers that have come to the group, so they're going to say their name and kind of what you're doing here and what your interests are. Go ahead.
My name is Dan. I'm an IT director. I recently, I'm in escrow for a triplex in mid-city of Los Angeles, right off of one of the great streets. So I'm looking to get into investments. I love IT, but I don't necessarily see myself doing it for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I'd like a little more flexibility, ultimately, in my lifestyle and the things that I get to do.
Right.
So I wouldn't mind, leaving a full-time IT job and maybe teaching, or I'd love to go back to school for other things as well. So
Right.
those are all kind of in my wheelhouse of something I'd like to do rather than work.
Yeah.
I would say 40 hours a week, but I don't remember the last time I worked 40 hours a week.
It's more than 40 hours a week.
So,
Wow. Okay. So that's great. So first off, congratulations on buying a triplex. It's your first investment property.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Great. And in mid Los Angeles, that's an interesting area to buy in, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
To
put it lightly. So he's bought mid Los Angeles. There's a little saying, and it's not glamorous, but it's trash is cash. And it's that if you go to the worst areas, South Central, areas.
This isn't South Central.
It's not.
This is more like
It's a Miracle Mile.
Oh, okay, so he's in a great area. Okay, good. All right, he's in a great area.
It's not Laguna.
Yeah, right. No, but Miracle Mile, that's a great area. Right. So, all right, but so I'll finish that. Is that if you buy something in the worst area, like he's in Miracle Mile in the middle of Los Angeles, which is a very nice, strong area, really great architecture. And if you go to South Central, or someplace that's got graffiti all over and it's really rough, you get more income. So that's, again, where you decide what works for you. Stability, you can drive up to it. Everybody has money in their savings account, jobs for a long time, different tenant base versus going to South Central. I did go to South Central, buy one building. I bought a triplex down there to see, okay, what's that like? And it's turned out great, except lots of graffiti and, the coin machines get vandalized every once in a while, so there's definitely some other things to handle with it, but it's turned out great in my experience. So when do you close?
It'll close at the end of the month.
Okay.
Already at the end of the month.
Right.
The middle of the next
Right.
this month.
And where did you get the cash to do that?
So I sold a condo
Uh-huh.
that I've been living in. So I'm in that transition where I need to live in one of the units.
Right. So did you get owner financing?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So a very smart move. Getting the best financing you can by moving in as an owner. He'll be there. Probably I would guess you're planning to live there, get equity, and then you probably, your ideal scene is not to live in the triplex for the rest of your life. Right. So he's utilizing it again as a stepping stone.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what my fiance and I are looking.
Yeah, it seems like a great way to at least get in.
Yes.
And then what the opportunities are, because now the market seems very high. Although every time I say that, it keeps
I know, right.
And in Los Angeles and in Southern California, based on the research I've done, from LA all the way down to San Diego, there's a paucity of housing
Yes.
in general. So it seemed like this was a great move. Instead of buying another condo or a house, I could leverage this to potentially get into something more. And I'm really curious about that. You touched on it earlier. After the first one, financing options and leveraging,
Right.
kind of some of the things that you've done to
Yes.
I can plan ahead, especially if we look at our market trends. Maybe in another 3 years, depending on what the Fed does, we'll see a dip, and I want to be ready for that.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right. And how long of a mortgage did you get?
Right now, I went with a 30-year because I don't know what my future is going to be.
Right.
So I went with the more stable loan rather than a shorter term loan. Right. And I wasn't really sure if that was the right choice. I was looking at some of the other options.
Well, we should have talked. Or your agent would usually work with you, or a loan broker, about this stepping up. Or Marty Stone's book is great about utilizing the leverage. He's about pulling the leverage. The minute you have equity, like in the next 4, 5, 8 years, when you have equity, you pull it and go get something else. So that the 30-year loan, you probably would be in it 5 or 7 or 10 years. So what he's doing is really the model of what I did, is start out and start building up the equity, and then start taking the equity and move into other buildings, right? So that's his plan. He's just starting on that. And are you going to have cash flow on your building?
Not while I'm living in it, but
Right.
as soon as I move out,
Right.
there's cash flow.
There would cash flow. So see, that's great to know. In a nice area in LA, he's getting cash flow. And how much did you have to put down?
I'm in that negotiation phase right now with the lender.
Right.
So it's in the mid to high 200,000.
So what's the percentage? Like
20.
So 25% down on a triplex. That's amazing. That's really great. I think about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, it was like, when we were in the middle of that, it was like 40% down. They just locked everything up. So it's really nice that that's loosened up. So he's really utilizing leverage, right? He's only putting, say like his building's 400,000, he's putting 100,000 in, and he's getting an extra 300,000 a building only for putting 100,000 in. That 300,000, of course, is a loan with the bank. So he's utilizing leverage, which is great. I'm sure his building didn't cost 400,000. Probably twice that, at least.
Yeah.
At least. Yeah, right.
It's a crazy neighborhood.
Yeah. And then what's the condition of the building?
It's in great condition.
Right.
We recently went through all the inspections. No major issues. Everything is. I've seen a lot of different reports on different buildings. My friends that have bought homes, and a couple of them have owned apartment buildings. And I've seen all these reports, and I've never seen a report that was this clean.
Nice.
So,
Right.
It's knock on wood.
Right.
Nothing else will continue. Nothing else will jump out. There's one more report.
Yeah. Right.
So it looks great.
So congratulate. Like, don't you think that's really huge? He took the move. You found the building. You've time to sell the condo, get into your building somewhat, which is also a little stressful. I'm sure. Trying to get out of the house and into the triplex.
It's totally worth it.
Yeah.
What is your cash flow, if you don't mind sharing?
If I'm not living there, then the cash flow is, depending on the final negotiation, how much we put down, it'll probably be 500%. So, which in the middle of this,
That's good.
That's a great cash flow.
Yeah.
Because everything in that neighborhood is, the fourplex, there's a fourplex 2 or 3 blocks away. Yeah, and it's listed, I think 300,000 more than what my escrow's at. So not even,
So you're already like totally made money.
Yeah. So in that neighborhood, to be in it, there's a lot of money being funneled into that big street.
Right.
So I could see it really being.
Right. And did you get the building for any reason because your real estate agent was connected, or it was within their office, or anything like that?
No, unfortunately no. And there was a couple opportunities.
Yeah.
But I was outbid to such a level, and it kind of put me at a place where I didn't feel like once I moved out, the cash flow was going to be working.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I was really insistent that I had to have some cash flow once I moved out.
Nice. And then, rates, rental rates are generally going up, so what you're projecting now and when you move out will be different likely. Yeah. And if you put money into the units or fix things up, you'll probably get more as well. Good. And is it rent controlled?
It is not rent controlled.
Okay, so that's kind of unusual in the middle of Miracle Mile to have non-rent control, right?
Yes.
That's very unusual. So that's fabulous.
3 units, I think, no longer have. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, okay. Well, usually anything built before 79 has rent control. But there are strange little pockets in Los Angeles, Koreatown, my area in South Central that don't have rent control. So you can find pockets. So maybe you're in a...
All that, there's a person who just moved in, a young couple that has been there for a little over a year that are having a child, and there's a couple looking to move out, so it works out great for me.
Yeah.
So hopefully, knock on wood, things will continue to look pretty smooth.
Yeah, good.
So,
And are they delivering the building empty?
they're not only delivering empty, I wish they were.
Yeah, that would be really, because they could say they're not moving out, but I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure hopefully they'll move out before I have to have to negotiate with them.
You move in with Nicole, right? Hi, sister. She's like, I don't think so. Yeah.
But I was looking for a place where it would be delivered empty, but what they were getting for the rents, I felt like it was worth it.
Yeah, right. And do you have a contract with that person that they're leaving or anything, or the notice or anything like that?
Not yet.
Okay. So
there may be some negotiation.
Yeah, I would encourage your agent to get with you on that and get things in writing so that they get out, for sure. Yeah, yes?
I've heard that one of the benefits of having a shopping center versus apartment complex or any residential rental or anything is that it's easier to get rid of a bad tenant in a shopping center than it is for, let's say it's a pregnant woman in there and she's like fleeting and she's not leaving. So maybe you could talk about that, and then how, if this is truly an issue with having a complex, is it a big legal hassle in California to make sure someone vacates?
It's, let's see, a couple questions. Generally, it's by the lease, right? So if you're in a commercial, if someone has a commercial building, those leases are long, 3, 5, 10 years, 20 years even out. If you have a Walgreens, those are like 20 years leases, or Jiffy Lube or something like that. So if those people, you can't really get them out. Unless that someone defaults on their lease, then you can get them out. But you can't, as far as I know, you can't break their lease and kick them out. On apartments that are not rent controlled, I can give 30-day notice to somebody who's been there under a year and 60-day notice to someone who lived over a year. So you really don't have a problem getting someone out. If someone says, I'm not leaving or I'm not paying my rent, then you just go to eviction, which is like $650. Then you have the lawyer take care of it and the person, and it's backed up in court these days because we're, what's going on in Los Angeles, and a lot of the courts are really backed up. So it will back up a little bit, and maybe you get them out in 4, 5, 6 months out of your unit. 3, 4, 5 months probably is when you get somebody out of your unit.
So if they don't pay, then you're really have a good argument to get them out. Right?
That's kind of your only argument. If it's rent controlled, that would be your only argument to get them out. There's very few ways to get a rent controlled person out of a unit. And I had a gal really was challenging and saying, there's bees there. 1 week, oh my God, the bees, you've got to get someone out, there's bees. And then the next week, something's living under the building, there's possums. And the next week, there's water all over the floor. The plumber comes back and goes, she had ice that had melted on the floor. So we couldn't get her out, though. It was just costing me money, and we have to act on anything like that. It could be real. And anyway, couldn't get her out. And then she finally quit paying, and we got her out. So
they have to quit paying, and then it's easier to get.
If they're rent controlled, yes, then you could get them out. If not, if it's not rent controlled, it's 30 or 60-day notice to move. And then if they didn't, you'd go to eviction, which is 3, 4, 5 months to get them out. Usually, unless. So, I mean, I've never seen anything over that long in my 10, 12 years, 15 years of owning buildings.
So
Last
week, what is the most difficult issue that people have in all these things you're talking about? Is it not evicting people, or is it just the fact that you may overestimate the value of something.
Okay, so Lynn has a great question. She's saying, what's the biggest kind of hurdle or problem or biggest issue that comes up in owning apartment? I'll have to speak with apartments. My dad had commercial buildings, and now my sister runs those, so I kind of know about that. I would say the biggest issue in apartments is your management company, because they're just, it's challenging. They're running your business while you're not there. They're making decisions every day. They're hiring people. They're spending your money. They have 1,000 units. Are they that worried that the guy charged you $250 to go change a screen door? Like, not that worried. So that's the challenging part, I think, for the management companies. But if you get a good manager, which I have now in Long Beach, I'm like sailing. And nothing else is hard, really. It's I really have not had issues. It's really easy. I mean, you have an eviction, you send it to the lawyer, it's all taken care of, management company oversees it. Someone leaves a bunch of trash, they pick it up and move it, so there's always support. They're very well supported. Yeah. So, and then I think, did you have a question? Yeah, I answered it. All right, good. All right, so what about you, Nicole? Do you have anything to add? Okay. So, you know, it's about managing the equity. I think you guys have gotten in here the opportunity that Lynn has and Brad has, and what was your name again? Daniel. Yeah, and that Danielle has, is that they've got equity, or in Pilar's case, she's bought a house and she's owning it, and it has gone up in equity. She got a great buy on it, and that's going up, and she'll get to the point where she'll pull her equity out and goes and buys something. So then you have the choice of what you go buy, and I mean, there's $400,000 to $500,000 buildings in Long Beach, in South Central, in Downey, and some ancillary markets that people can go into. So there are lower priced buildings that are available in those markets that you go into and you say, this is a stepping stone, I'm buying this. The plan is to hold it. Generally, we say that the South Bay area, it goes up about 7% a year. Marty, my mentor's done a lot of books, or a lot of graphs and things, and he pretty much conclusively has said that it's about 7%. When I do my numbers, I do 3 to 5% to be really diligent. I don't want to overestimate anything, to look at the amount of appreciation. But, you know, realistically, once you put money down, you have the 4 ways that the building is going to return, and that's, one is through the cash flow. Okay, what are they? You guys must know by now. Kevin's got to know. What are the 4 ways that building returns on your investment?
Let me see if I can name them. So there's your favorite, depreciation.
Depreciation, right? The untalked about, just the star quarterback, right?
Yeah, there's appreciation.
Appreciation, which we can count on and not count on. That comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
But overall, it's going up.
And then there's cash flow.
And cash flow, let me just comment on cash flow. Cash flow is something that, like, you're looking at numbers and what your cash flow is, but it changes. You may decide you want to move and take a job, or you're moving to Kentucky, now you have to get a manager. His cash flow would change. He may decide he wants to really upgrade all the units. He's going to put tile in versus carpet. They all of a sudden is spending more money. So cash flow, you can look at a projected one, and then it can be blown to hell for a year and then come back and be much better than you thought, or they upgraded. And I had a building, the building next door, I bought it. This is due diligence, all right? I bought a building. It was in foreclosure. It was a great deal, and I bought it, and then I found out, oh, it's a drug rehab next door. Uh-oh. So my rents, like, everything was a lot more turnover. We had cars broken into. Like, it was a mess. But so my cash flow wasn't so good. Now that's been sold. It's been redone. My cash flow's up. The building's gorgeous, redone. But that building had a little bit of a curve when I first bought it, of like, you know, what have I done? So that's cash flow. Don't count on it. It changes. And?
I'm trying to think what the 4th is.
What's the 4th? 4th way that you get is principal reduction. Because it's an expense. Every month you're paying the bank to reduce your principal, which is your loan amount, right? So you pay them, let's say, $1,000 a month. It's an expense, and it doesn't go in your pocket, but it sort of goes in the bank and goes into your savings account. So that's another thing. The end of the year, you look at how much did I reduce my principal. That's a percentage return on your equity. So you get percentage returns on all of these. If you put $100,000 down on your $400,000 duplex, that $100,000 is earning the percentage of cash flow the percentage that you're getting on your tax credits for your depreciation, the percentage you're getting on your principal reduction, and your depreciation. So all of those different percentages of return on the amount you put into the building are all added up to your overall return. So the returns can be really big because
Principal reduction that's coming out of your cash flow. So is that really?
It's kind of out of
money?
Well, it's sort of like it comes out of your cash flow, so you don't count it there, but then you do
Yeah.
get to count it again because it comes back into your principal reduction.
Okay, so come back to you.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's a little round circle in a way. So 4 ways. So I mean, by the time you look at like, okay, 4% on that, and if you look at the appreciation, say 3% on I'm not good at numbers, so I need a little help here. But so like you have your $400,000 building and you have 3% appreciation. So that 3% is really on the $400,000 building. So it's $12,000 a year, right? But you're really getting $12,000 a year appreciation on the $100,000 you put down, right? So that 3% really equals 12% return. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's at 3%. So imagine when things were like at 12 or 15, they can really be huge, that percentage. And that could be that 12,000 that ends up being 12%, it's only one of your 4 returns. So by the time Jeff Chonas, who's a real estate agent in the South Bay area, says he looks at most of the deals he does are like 20 to 25% return. So there's the canine friend who's decided to join us. He has a question. What about my walk? His question, what about my walk? I'm still waiting for that walk. Yeah, that's an expensive doghouse, right? So what time is it? 12:15. Okay, so we're scheduled to go about 90 minutes. Any other questions or comments or like insights or anything else?
So maybe the biggest factors when you're choosing a property are, the first and foremost and biggest one, it seems to me, is get in at a great price, because then if you screw up or market conditions change, you have a buffer. So.
Well, I wouldn't even really say that, because like I bought at the top of the market, $1.2 million, the market went down to 900,000. But it was an apartment building that's returning $3,000 a month. I wasn't going to sell and say, oh no, because where would I put the money anyway? It's a great building by then, it's painted landscape. So as long as it's returning, if you had a building that was only appreciation, say like you bought a house to flip, or you bought a house and you said, this is a $500,000 house, I know it's worth $750,000, and all of a sudden it went down $150,000 or something, and you bought it for $700,000 and it went down to $500,000, let's say. You'd be a little nervous if you're only making $400 a month in your cash flow to be that much behind in your appreciation. But if you have a big apartment building and you're getting all this income, it's not. I just don't go with in that big down swoop. And I guess too, it depends on who you learn from and who your mentors are and who you surround yourself with. My dad was one that owned buildings, and we went through cycles, growing up my whole life, up and down. And he never was saying, oh, I've lost this much money in my building, and oh, this is going on. Never had any of that. He just knew long term, just own it, keep it, nobody's doing anything. He was of the school that you pay off the building, and that was fine. He didn't leverage and build this huge portfolio. He built a nice portfolio. And I'm of the school of thought that you do leverage and build, then you can cruise a bit. Although, like I said earlier, my mentor says you still don't leave a bunch of cash in those buildings, because if there was a gas tank built underneath your building and you had a big toxic thing and the money's in that building, there's a lot of reasons he believes to get the money out of the building and have it under your control. So that's an interesting thought, that even later you get the money out of your buildings.
Wait, I don't know if it's adequate because maybe it's getting apart from the subject, but the last time that I was here, you were saying that when you or your friend, that when you only have income from rentals and you don't have really assets, it's very hard that the banks will invest on you, or that they will lend you money.
Well,
so can you go again to us?
Well, that's it. That's an interesting discussion. Last time we were here, one of the other women that comes, that she's just owned her own real estate company. She owns a building that I think she bought for $400,000. It's worth $2.5 million. So she's just totally set up for retirement. But her thing is she can't refinance that building because she just owns the building and gets the income from it. And the banks are like, yeah, you have a $2.5 million building, but you know, what a, anyway, so that she's having trouble. I don't know that that's true right now. Her experience has been that she's having trouble, but banks are changing. Like I think every 6 months they change. I only have rental income, and I'm financed on this house, and I'm just doing 5 refinances, you guys, taking 5 of my buildings and redoing the loans on them, and the loan amount, the loan percentage is coming down. So what do you think my cash flow is doing? Going up.
How come they're coming down because interest rates are rising?
Well, but I've just tied in, this house is at 3.50 and my buildings are at 4%. What did you just get on your triplex?
That 4.1.
4.1, right. So I'm just redoing a couple of buildings and they're all at the 4 percentage.
Why did you choose 10 years? You said earlier.
My mentor, again, you know, it's like I always like to have somebody that I'm tapping into for information, and that's why I encourage you to have me, utilize other friends, other real estate clubs, read Marty's book, just keep pulling in information. But Marty, my mentor, really believes, again, he looks at all the graphs, we're in another upcycle for the next 7 or 8 years, and interest rates will go up. But he believes we're in another upcycle that may dip or flatten out a little bit for the next 7 or 8 years. So he said, get into as long as loans as you can. Whereas when I first started my portfolio, he was like, do short loans. But I still never would do really short loans because it scared me. So I'd pay a higher interest rate and feel better, and then I'd end up getting out of that loan because my building was worth another $100,000, and I'd say I'm going to go take 100 from this one and 100 from this building and take 200 and put it down on a $600,000 building.
How long do you like to stay in these apartment complexes generally? I've traded out of 2, but I hold, buy and hold. And I recently, with all the managers, the problems, had thought I just should get rid of 1. Because I also bought this house, I have a house in Mexico, and I was like, all right, if you buy something else, you have to sell something. But I looked at all my buildings, which I have 7, there is no dog. They're all functioning well, running well, everything. So I did sell 1 that I didn't get along with. I don't know that it was a dog. I didn't like the building. It was the 12 unit. So is the reason why you get like 10 years for all these others, the apartment complex?
I usually get 5-year loans because they've appreciated enough that within 5 years I pull the money out.
Oh, so
But
you
it's
sell them or you pull
No,
them out?
I pull money out.
But then in 5 years you have to refinance again,
Yes.
and that's okay.
Yeah, sometimes you have to look at what the market's doing. Right now things are so low that it doesn't cost that much to go up for a 10-year loan. Like he got 30 years for 3 point something, and you're paying principal and interest?
I know.
You what?
I know. I've got it for oh, sorry, yes.
You're paying principal and interest, right? So I'm doing a loan. So this is a really interesting thing on loans, and we're almost at our hour and a half, which is about the capacity of a brain to be focused on something. But I'll just say this about loans is they keep coming up with new programs. Like I'm just now doing a triplex, and I'm doing a loan that's at 4.6%, which is higher than what Daniel's doing his loan at. But they're doing 4.6 because they charge you more in interest because it's an interest-only loan. So basically my payment's coming down over $1,000 a month, but I'll only be paying interest. Okay, which is totally fine with me because I don't care about spending the money and taking the principal down. Any appreciation, and I don't need the extra, say $1,000 a month goes in principal, that's $12,000 a year I'd be putting in principal to pay it down. Well, it's appreciating, you know, at 3%. I don't need to put the money into the principal. I would just as soon not pay principal myself. That's, again, my comfort zone. Other people feel like they've got to pay the principal down. That's their comfort zone. I've been in neg-am loans, love those, if you understand what those are, where you don't even pay your whole interest. It gets tacked back on the principal. So, like, yes, you say like your interest, you owe us $1,000. Well, you know what? You have such an appreciating great asset. You pay us $500, and we'll make your principal go up $500 this month. So you're going negative amortization. A lot of people got in trouble, and it was a disaster for many. I had a loan, and I think my principal went up $30,000 over the years because I would just pay a low amount and take the money and reinvest.
Cash flow.
Exactly. So right. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting because that's the only reason why I didn't look into doing an interest only loan is because when I'm living there, I don't get the cash. I'll be out of pocket.
Right, yes,
So to me, that was a real negative against interest only, but if I went, when I'm not living there and it's making cash flow, I thought maybe there's an opportunity in the future to do interest only.
yes,
But I still kind of understand the risks.
right. But you could have done probably an interest only now, and then you would have gotten more cash flow. If you haven't done it, does your loan,
We're still in the negotiations.
okay, I would look into an interest-only loan because your payment will go down. You just won't be paying into principal, which it depends on what you need to do. But I don't think in California, a strong market, that you need to be paying down your principal. And again, for everybody, on the web or anything, you've got to weigh out your building, your cash flow, how much you're putting down, what your comfort zone is, what your income is, your reserves. It's a lot of things that go into making any decision like this. So a blanket statement for me is true, I think, in most cases, but each person has to be sensitive to what they have in their, deck of cards. Yeah. And Pilar?
How? I constantly hear that you mention that every other time you refinance your loans. Usually, do you have a pattern that every 2 years, or as soon as I get it 2 years, then I refinance?
No, it happened right now that I'm refinancing it because I need to remodel this. And I spent a lot on the down payment on this, and I need to remodel it. So I need a lot of cash. So where do I go? The big ATM, all the buildings, it's the big ATM, right? So I go to my buildings and I pull cash out to replenish my reserves, my savings, and also to fund this remodel. So honestly, Pilar, other times it's been motivated because I have equity and I want to buy another building, or other times it's been motivated because interest rates went down and I wanted to get into a lower interest rate, or I wanted, maybe interest rates looked like they were going up and I had 3 years left on a mortgage and I said, I'm going to refinance this because I want to go 7 years. I want to get a longer term on the mortgage. I'd like to reset the mortgage into a longer term. Does that answer your question?
And you do that with the same institution that you hired the loan, or you go with somebody else?
You can go with somebody else or the same institution. I've done a bunch of loans with Chase, which is really aggressive in the commercial market. And it's also actually a little easier to get financed if you buy a building 5 units and above. It definitely is. The residential financing is harder right now. So 5 and above is easier. They are looking more at the asset than you as a person.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Something that my eyes are really open to in a recent educational thing I went to is all the steps in which you can buy and enter. And so, I learned about just looking up buildings that are in default, with owners in default, and making an offer to the lender to buy the debt. And you could buy the first, the second, or the third. You buy the third and then pay off the first and the second, bring it current, just all these different ways. And if you can get a grasp on that and really understand what you're doing, there can be really great opportunities on it. And then just, I can't buy cash at auction, but I found out that if you can show up to these auctions, you just talk to the guy who bought it with cash, he's going to flip it anyways. And so before he incurs any cost, just make an offer to him. And so.
Yes. So what Kevin's talking about is basically buying things at totally reduced prices at auction, or buying defaulted notes from things like that. That's a little more active because you've got to, if you're going to go to the auction and there's these 5 things that are up at the auction, you really better have driven around to them. So there may be one in Monrovia and another one's in South Central and another one, it'd be labor intensive.
Well, if you're buying cash, you've got to buy as is. But if I'm buying financed from the person who paid cash, then I can have some time and contingencies and things I imagine.
Yeah.
I don't know what they'll actually accept as far as contingencies, but I wondered if I really do have to. Maybe I just see, this fits my basic description I'm looking for in price range. Maybe I just make an offer, and then if it doesn't look good, I just retract it.
Right.
Is that reasonable, or is that?
I think it depends. There's some markets, especially discounted things, there's people with all cash. So, and Danielle just saw that too, and any of us are seeing it. When you go to buy something, the biggest person that I was bidding against on this house was an all-cash buyer, and you too were against cash buyers. Right. So when Kevin talking about going and buying these notes and loans and defaulted liens and things, a lot of people are coming in with cash. So it depends on how you can come in. He's got somebody that he's met who says they can go in and kind of say they're doing cash, but in the end, once you get in contract, you go into being financed. I'm not sure how that works, but my opinion has been those are great ways to make money. You really have to know that market. I think and know the intricacies and the paperwork, or comb it on the web. And actually, Kevin was saying that's his propensity, is to be like really detail oriented and get in the lists and all that. It wouldn't be my propensity. So he might be the kind of guy that can go do that well and has personality, whereas it wouldn't be my. I want to drive around a 10 square mile area and look at 4 properties and say, I like that one. Make it a little easier. So.
Can you touch base, going back to the interest-only loans, but and maybe this is just a general question about managing your investments and making sure that you hold as necessary. How do you track or plan your behaviors around making sure that you don't miss those opportunities?
Well, you just are aware of what's going on in the market. Like you manage you weren't here, you manage yourself when you own property, you manage yourself, like when the market goes down or your tenant steals all your cabinets or something terrible or funky, or backs in drunk one night and the whole garage falls down. Like, you have to manage yourself and how you react. You have to manage the property. Are you doing gardening? Are you painting it? Are you doing this? And you manage the equity. So you would be aware of what's happening in your market and say, oh, my building's gone up 300,000. Like, you can't refinance right now, but you could probably in 1 year maybe go take out 100 or 200,000. If it's true what you said, and if the market holds steady, but that's not unusual for someone to buy a building. And I have another friend who just bought a building, and the agent said, oh, it'll be worth 200,000 in 6 months when she takes all the rents up. So because hers, the rents were really low in Long Beach, and she just could give 60-day notices and take those rents up. But she's going to have to put money into the units because they've had long-term tenants.
So a situation like that where somebody steals cabinets or drives their car into the house, whatever, is that just you go through your insurance and they investigate?
Well, I've had buildings since 2002, never had anything bad like that. I've had a couple of trip and falls. One was real, and the others were not, and they were all handled by insurance. If something did happen like that, it would just honestly be insurance. Yeah. So you have insurance or big umbrella. I have a big umbrella policy. Some things are not covered with your insurance for these buildings. Like this is not covered for landslide, and Laguna's had a couple of those. And I think my buildings are not covered for earthquake. I don't get earthquake on anything. Just kind of do this and hope.
What I understand, nobody gets earthquake. This is what I heard. Nobody gets earthquake because if you buy it, you aren't covered by FEMA, and if you don't have earthquake insurance, you are covered by FEMA, and so you just be wasting your money if you do buy earthquake insurance because you're not getting a big benefit and you're just paying a lot because
you're
earthquakes happen and they happen.
Yeah.
So you got to pay a lot for that insurance because it's pretty much a sure thing that's going to happen.
Yeah. Earthquake insurance is expensive, and just think of 7 buildings for 12 years. I would have a lot of cash that went out in there. And my mentor again says, you've got FEMA. They're not going to let all the apartment buildings just go into ruin and not be usable. They've got to get in there and restore things. So although they didn't do such a hot job in New Orleans, but I think in the middle of California, Los Angeles County, they would probably step up. One more question, and then it's probably about 90 minutes, then we're going to wrap it up. Yes.
Yeah.
So your general philosophy with these apartment complexes is to get a long-term, like 10-year plus loan, hold as long as you can, but also be opportunistic when you see other things come up and you have to sell it because something better comes up?
Actually not. My philosophy is to get into a building and hold it and have your eye on the long term, and you manage the equity. So you may want to take money out before the 10 years is up. And it's hard to get I can't get 10-year loans right now on my apartment buildings. I can get 7 years. They will do 10 years, but it jumps from like 4.6 to like 7% that you
So
would
you just refinance.
you refinance, but rates will be up in 7 years. Like the rates really will be up. So cash flow will change then. So you just have to be aware. We all get in and we go with the tide. But like my new loan that I'm doing too is a 40-year amortization. So even when my interest only comes due in 10 years, it would start amortizing, which means I start paying the principal down, but it's on a 40-year schedule. So I don't have to pay that much principal. So they come up with new loans to make things work. I mean, in Hong Kong, things are so expensive. They supposedly do 100-year amortizations, right? So that means you're going to pay back. You borrowed from us $400,000. You have to pay it back over 100 years. So you're paying like $30 a month against that. Where in the States, a 30-year amortization, maybe you're paying $400 a month. So they just make it more, and then they do interest only, or they did neg-ams for a while to get any and everybody into loans. So it's much more regulated than it was when everything went bust, but there's still, I see the programs coming out again. I'm in interest only and 40-year amortization right now. So, and they're all helping my cash flow. So
Your agent is the one that tells you about the programs or their web pages?
no, I have a loan broker who knows the different programs, and they get me up on that. So I'm going to wrap up this meeting. We can continue and talk, and we will have a meeting next month. It'll be up in Los Angeles, which I'm due to go up to. I appreciate everybody driving up to Laguna. Next month we'll be in Los Angeles, and thank you for anyone that joined us on the web, and happy investing. Thanks. Great, you guys. I have to blow.